I would like to call to order the January 4th, 2021 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome everyone. It's good to have all of you viewing on television with us, as well as those people looking from the web page. First on our agenda is the approval of the work session agenda, and you all have a copy of that before you. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda, including the changes on page 3.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Honeycutt and a second by Commissioner Shue. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you. And we move now to discussion items that require no action. And first up on that one is from Cabarrus County Schools, the 2020-21 North Carolina Department of Public Instruction Facility Needs Survey. And we have several folks that will talk with us about that, and I will turn the floor over to Jonathan Marshall and let him lead off on that one.
Actually, Brian Cohn is going to take this.
That was easy. All you had to do is just pass it over to him, and Brian's got his mic muted.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm going to take a few minutes and go over a summary of what this facility needs survey is. I'm going to share my screen with you here. Is it presenting yet?
Looks like it's loading up. There you go.
All right, so what we wanted to do is, again, just give you a few minutes summary of what the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction Statewide Facility Needs Survey is about, and exactly what it is we're asking of this commission to do with this study. So again, the study itself is a part of the general statute that requires the local boards of education to submit long-range plans for meeting school facility needs to the State Board of Education. And this started back in January 1st of 1988, and was required every 5 years thereafter. So we are currently in that 5-year cycle this year.
Can I interrupt just 1 minute?
Sure.
Did the screen go away for everybody else? Can you guys still see the presentation?
It went away from me.
Yes. Yeah, all I'm seeing is everybody's picture.
Okay, hang on 1 second.
I did have it, but then it went away.
It says, let me try again. It says there's a problem displaying content. Let me try one more time.
The graphic images is what it is.
There you go.
Back up now?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, all right. We'll work through this. There's only a few slides, but again, so the statute requires us to do this every 5 years, and this was put in place back in January of 1988. What the Department of Public Instruction Safe and Healthy School Support Division, through the school planning, they facilitate this statewide study, and they tabulate results in a comprehensive report through various consultants and technical support that's provided to the 115 different school systems that identify the current and projected facility needs. Also a part of that, the average daily membership, or the ADM numbers, they're also provided by the financial and business service divisions of DPI, as well as enrollment projections that are calculated by the school planning section. The result of all this information that we provide gives the total facility or LEA's needs over a 5 and 10 year period. And And my page is not changing. Are y'all seeing that? Did the page change?
Mine hasn't changed either.
Right, mine neither.
Good. I can't get to the slideshow. Hang on 1 second.
Fine, I'm happy to share if you need me to.
Yeah, Lauren, if you don't mind, because there's only 2 more slides.
Okay, one
That
moment.
might be better. And I'm going to stop presenting. Yeah. There we go. So what exactly is included in the facility needs survey? There are capacity numbers that we provide on a time scale of 0 to 5 years at each facility, as well as a 6 to 10 year projection at each facility. Also a part of that, the financial piece, is the renovation and capital cost summary on the same time scale of a 0 to 5 year and a 6 to 10 year. The average daily membership for the 2019-2020 current school year is also a part of this report, as well as that average daily membership projection by year and grade level through a 10-year period, which would take us through to 2029-2030. And again, the final piece of what this report has is the local educating agency, or the LEA's, approval and certification by the Board of Education and the Board of County Commissioners. So how do we arrive at all this information that we put in to DPI? They provide us a program that evaluates and reports the needs electronically. What we do is we provide a list of the schools that has the first month ADM, as we said, and then the 10-year projections. Then we take the typical, they have a typical 2020 unit cost and building area standards from the North Carolina Department of Public School Facility Guidelines that are built into the program. What this does is it provides all the math and calculation as we enter the data into the system. This then provides a complete facility need database program that when we is returned by the LEA that is returned from the LEA to the School Planning Association. This program is then used to build the statewide database that is provided in a report through DPI. And again, the last piece to it is the certification by the Board of Education and the county commissioners that will be returned to DPI upon approval. Next slide, Lauren.
So what we ask of you tonight is basically the fact that you receive the report, and by receiving the report, you review it. You do not have to, it does not constitute an endorsement, nor does it constitute a commitment to fund the survey or the facility needs. It just let the state know that we have passed this needs on to you as county commission. I guess in some other counties, we don't have the relationship that we have here, fortunately, where sometimes county commission say, well, I didn't know they need this. But we have a very good relationship with you, obviously, and you pretty much know what our needs are at all times. But that's all you have to do now, and basically just a signature from you saying you have received the report and you have been informed of the report going to the state.
And I believe a part of your agenda packet has the summary report that we printed out. And if you took that information and printed it out sheet by sheet for every school, it's about 2-3 ring binders worth of paperwork. So I'd be happy to try and answer any questions if you have them right now. Otherwise, that's kind of what we're asking of you tonight.
Well, Brian, I think you did an excellent job of both preparing the report and explaining it. And I only have one simple question. Now that you've made the state of North Carolina aware of our needs, are they going to send down the funds to take care of all those issues?
I don't think we can promise that, but I do think they use this information, though, as part of their lobbying program to the legislature for funding of school facilities. So I guess that's one of their big uses for this information once they receive it.
Yeah, and I would be happy once I don't know how quickly the turnaround is on the report from Department of Public Instruction, Mr. Morris, but obviously once we get a hold of that, we'd be happy to share that with you so you can see the results of it.
Well, absolutely, and I certainly can. I said that last question a bit tongue in cheek, but I do definitely see the value. Certainly our state association has tried very hard over a number of years to make the General Assembly aware of the local school needs and to encourage the passage of state school bonds and other methods of funding school construction. So there certainly is value in that. I think there's also value in it for us as a Board of Commissioners as well, to look at the information that you've provided, which is pretty overwhelming, just at first blush. But right. Obviously, there's a lot of effort that's gone into it. Does anyone else have questions for Tim or Brian?
Not really a question, Mr. Chairman, but I think that maybe you might have mentioned this. I remember in meetings in the past with the legislature, particularly when we go up for usually in May, when we have our legislative day, some of the different legislators would be talking about the need for schools in North Carolina and $8 billion in needs. So whenever this new survey is compiled and we get the results, I'll be interested to see if we went up or if we went down in needs. Whereas it was 8 billion, are we going to be looking at 7 billion, or is it going to be 10 billion? Because we've been building schools like crazy, as you know, and all across the state, there's been a lot of schools built. So a lot of land bought too. So I'd be interested to see when that comes out.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? I think that we do not necessarily have to vote. All that we need for me to sign off on this report and for it to go back to DPI is a consensus that you have all received the report. And as Brian mentioned, there is a copy of it in your agenda. So do we have consensus? If we do not, if anybody is opposed to that, please say no at this time. So I think we do, and thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us to make that presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Next on our agenda is item 3.2, and that is our innovation report. And we are happy to have Debbie Brannon to bring that to us.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year to you. Welcome to the first innovation report of 2021. Let's see if we can get this slideshow to work. We're starting the new year off with the Employee Digital Book Club reading Superpower. January's Audible book Superpower will help Cabarrus County Super Capco employees increase their superpower. The book explores 7 principles that help us solve problems faster, make better decisions, and improve our professional and personal life. Join me in listening to Superpower on Hoopla to discover ways to make better decisions, implement them faster, get more done with less effort, and enjoy a better quality of life at work. As you know, Cabarrus County employees have been working diligently to deliver services during the pandemic. Today's report is on the Symptom Checker app, an innovation used to help keep our employees and customers healthy and safe. The purpose of the Symptom Checker app is to provide employees a simple and easy way to verify to their supervisors before reporting to work each day that they do not have COVID-19 symptoms. After completing the symptom checker, a confirmation email is sent to the employee and to the employee's supervisor indicating the employee's response. If symptoms or an exposure is reported, additional instructions are included in the email. Safety and risk management and HR are also notified by email. The symptom checker was released as a tool for departments to use in June. It was not required then, but suggested as a good way to make sure staff check for symptoms before reporting to work. In December, use of the tool was mandated by the county manager as required for all employees except EMS and sheriff who have their own protocols in place. To use the Symptom Checker app, employees can log in to cabarruscounty.us/symptom checker from any device. We've also provided instructions to employees on how to create a shortcut on their phone's desktop or on their tablets to make it as simple as possible. Then they simply answer a yes or no question and a confirmation question before submitting the form. In the past 24 hours, have you experienced any of the following symptoms? If no, a reminder to continue COVID-19 safety precautions is given, and the employee confirms their work location for the day. If the employee answers yes to having symptoms, instructions are given to call in sick, stay home, monitor symptoms, and contact a healthcare professional if symptoms do not improve. And the employee confirms they will not report to work that day. At the request of HR and Safety and Risk Management, we are also adding an additional exposure question for those who have no symptoms. If no symptoms and no exposures, the employee confirms their work location for the day. If no symptoms and yes to exposure, the employee is instructed to stay home and contact their supervisor. For employees who answer no symptoms or exposures, a confirmation email is sent to them and their supervisor with their answer and work location for the day. For employees who answer yes to symptoms or exposure, they will also get a confirmation email with their answer, but they will also receive further instructions on what to do. The employee supervisor receives an email with the employee name and instructions to work with that employee to complete an exposure form and to notify other potentially exposed employees. Safety and Risk Management and HR receive a copy of the supervisor email. The completed exposure form is automatically routed to HR, Risk Management, and IM for follow-up contact tracking and facility cleaning. We're also capturing and analyzing the system checker data to monitor and address problem areas. In December, we had 11,463 symptom checker submissions. 40% of those were male, 60% female. Of the 11,294 reporting no symptoms, 40% were male, 60% were female. But of the 169 reporting yes to symptoms, 17% were male and 83% were female. This dashboard shows the breakdown of December submissions by race. The pie chart on the left represents no symptoms, 69% white, 25% black, and 6% other. The one on your right represents submissions of yes to symptoms. Those break down at 44% white, 50% black, and 6% other. This dashboard shows the December submissions reporting symptoms by age, and you can see it's all over the place, but that little lower line is the yes, so we don't really, you can see we don't have more than 20 by age in December. The most were at age 28, we had 17 responses of yes, and then at age 46, we had 14 of yes. And again, these are just reporting symptoms. This is not COVID positive that we know of. These are just simply symptoms, and we're asking people to stay home in case they have COVID. This dashboard reports on a daily basis how many people we have working from home. And today's submission, I looked at this about 1 o'clock. We had 134 people working from home and 468 working from their county location. These were from the about 22% working from home. And again, this is the number of submissions we have. I'm sure we had more people working than that today, but these were the only submissions we had today. From this dashboard of responses over the last 30 days, you can see in the first week of December, we were trending about 14 yeses submissions per day, which was trending at a little over 2%. And the submissions and the yes submissions dropped over the holidays if people were on vacation and holiday and began trending a little less than 2%. Today we had 9 yes out of 603, which is like 1.4%. This dashboard provides a report of submissions by supervisor, and I've kind of grayed out the supervisor's names here for confidentiality. But these submissions are by supervisor, and they allow HR and risk management to easily identify recurring or hotspot areas and the associated supervisor for follow-up action. And this chart provides a quick sort to see all the yeses on a certain day. Again, this allows safety and risk management to quickly see all the yeses responses for that day so they can respond. And I have grayed out the submitter's name and the supervisor's name. But as you can see, you can sort it and all the yeses come quickly to the top so they can reach out to those supervisors and employees for further action. The symptom checker reminds our employees of their personal responsibility to report COVID-19 symptoms and exposures, and is helping the county to respond quickly as needed to keep employees and customers healthy and safe. That is the end of my show. Any questions or anything you would like us to see? Do a little better. I think Lundy and or John, I don't know if John is online, can comment on how they're using this data. But I do think it's helping them to track areas where we need to go clean after there's been a possible exposure. And I think it's helping our employees kind of think before they come to work every day. We have a lot of dedicated employees, and I know I've been guilty of coming to work sick before. So we're trying to prevent that and make sure we have as few exposures as possible.
Great. Thank you very much, David. Does anybody have questions? All right, we appreciate that report, and we move now to discussion items for action. And first up is item 4.1. From Salisbury Rowan Community Action Agency, a presentation of their fiscal year 21-22 application for funding. We're delighted to have Sherry Tillman with us for that presentation. Welcome, Sherry.
Thank you for having me. Just like Mr. Moore said, my name is Sherry Tillman. I'm the Family Services Director here at Salisbury Rowan Community Action Agency. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes just to tell you a little bit about our program, as well as our 2021 application for funding. I'm not going to be before you long. I'm just going to give you some information. And if you have any questions as I'm going through, or either at the end, feel free to just let me know. Lauren, thank you for navigating my slide presentation, so I appreciate that. So I'm ready to go. So this is just our initial slide, just showing you a little bit about our program. So this is just a blurb of information about our program. Our program in 1964, Congress passed the Economic Opportunity Act to establish and fund community action agencies. Currently, there are over 1,000 nationwide agencies that provide services and programs to low-income individuals. One thing about our board, we have to have our board is made up of tripartite board, and that would be one part public officials, we have one part representatives from the low-income community, as well as appointed leaders of the private sector. And having that information, having that representation from the low-income community, we get lots of feedback on how we can best serve that community and what we're doing, is it working, what they like to see, or just help us decide what the need of the community, those needs are. Next slide. Okay, so this is for our program year 2021. Our total funding allocation is $518,327. Our allocation, we determined that based on the U.S. Census and our small area poverty income estimate. So for Rowan County, you can see the impoverished count is 22,298, where in Cabarrus County, that count is 18,839. Next slide. All right, so I have this information broken down into a graph, and you can see the orange being Cabarrus County, the blue being Rowan County. That is how those funds are going to be allocated per county, and that's with the total of 518,327 is split between those two counties. Next slide. All right, so this tells a little bit about our self-sufficiency program. So the self-sufficiency program is funded by the Federal Community Services Block Grant. It's designed to assist income-eligible families and individuals in both Rowan and Cabarrus County who are motivated to obtain employment or better employment with the goal of becoming self-sufficient. And the items listed below are the services, supportive services that we provide. So we provide employment assistance, job training, entrepreneurship support, budget and financial literacy, professional development, case management services, and lots of things go under those categories, but those are the categories, but the things that we provide underneath those categories are pretty massive. Next slide. All right, so this is our projected outcome targets for the 2021-22 year. So it's our plan to serve 130 families this is combined counties. It's our plan to, for low-income families rising above poverty, we'd like to see 10 new families, 15 participant families obtaining employment, 5 participant families obtaining better employment, 5 participant families obtaining jobs with medical benefits, 20 participant families completing educational and training programs and/or training programs, 2 participant families securing standard housing, and 20 participant families provided emergency assistance, as well as 20 participant families providing employment supports, and 30 educational supports. And a lot of times when we look at making those targets, we look at our previous years, how if we were successful in meeting those targets, and we also couple that with the things that are going on in the economy in terms of employment, housing, all those things. So we take account of all the things that are going on to help us with those targets. Next slide. All right, so this is just a breakdown of our 2019 and 2020 community impact, and these were our targets from last year. So last year we were able to achieve the targets that were listed. Emergency assistance, we provided 22, educational supports 39, employment supports 24, educational gains 36, housing gain 4, and employment gains 24. And these targets are that we were off from our original targets. This is what we achieved, but we were a little off from our target, and we contribute a lot of that to the impact that we've had in the community with COVID-19. Our agency, we were closed for several months, and we weren't able to provide that service. We were providing services from afar, but not until we were able to fully open our doors, when we were able to start back those services that we were accustomed to providing. So these targets, we felt like they were impacted because of COVID. Next slide. All right, so this is just our 2 locations that we have. The Rowan main office, that's our main location, and we have a satellite location in Concord at McGill Avenue in Concord, which is at Gibson Mill. So we have a satellite location there. We have 2 family development specialists there, as well as we have a CARES case manager that's also in that location temporarily. Outside of this, I didn't say anything about our CARES project. We have received funding through the CARES program, where we can provide emergency assistance to families or individuals in Rowan as well as Cabarrus County. And we've been pretty busy doing that so far. So we have that grant for another 1.5 years. So we've been busy working in the community, making sure we can assist with that need. That is all I have. I'm opening the floor for questions if you have any.
Okay, commissioners, does anyone have questions for Sherry?
Mr. Chairman, this is Lynn, and hello, Sherry. The question that I have is, on those target areas, do you have a certain amount of the amount that's budgeted, the 517,000? How much of that is allocated to those target areas? And also, how about the administrative costs to administrate this program? Do you have a breakdown somewhere of that?
Well, what I do have for you in terms of the breakdown, in terms of the client services. So a part of that, that overall figure, 58% of that is going toward client services. And that's where we pull those targets from. Those targets are in the client services department, if that answers your question.
Yeah, okay. So let me make sure I'm thinking on right, because I think you come before us last year too, didn't you? I believe you did.
No, I didn't. I'm new. So I started I started in March 16th, the day before COVID really shut everybody down. So yeah. My first day on this job, it was the day that the office closed. So yeah, no, okay. I'm new. So I think Dion takes
well, I don't hold that against you. That we all were new at one time, but I just want to have a better understanding. So if 58% goes toward the target allocation, does that mean that it takes 42% to administrate this program?
Yes, because we take that into account with training and all the other line items that we and 58%, I'm just estimating it maybe a little less or a little more than that, but yes, that's what it takes to allocate that program. Yes. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you very much. Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I just have one quick question. I noticed on your board of directors roster, it looks like we only have one person from Cabarrus County representing us. Are you actively seeking people to fill the other vacancies?
Yes, we are. We actually have a couple of open positions, so we're looking for some individuals for that roster. We'd love to have some individuals from Cabarrus County, just so we can balance it out, and we spend 50% of our time in Cabarrus County. So, okay. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? We thank you very much for bringing that report. This is very much like the report to Department of Public Instruction. This requires that we acknowledge that we have received the report, and so that will be included in our regular meeting agenda in 2 weeks. And we thank you for making your annual visit. We hope to see you again next year.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right.
Okay, we move now to item 4.2, and that is appointments to boards and commissions. And you all have a list of those in front of you. Those will also go on to our consent agenda for our regular meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I think there are recommendations for each of those positions. Okay, hearing none, we will move to item 4.3 from Active Livings and Parks, and we have a soccer complex recognition recommendation. And I will ask Londa Strong if she will lead us off on that, and I think she may have some guests as well.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Morris. At the November Active Living and Park Commission, Kevin Crutchfield made a presentation to our commission in reference to naming some fields at Frank Lewis Park after a couple of folks that were involved greatly in the development of that facility. And Kevin is with us today, so I'm going to let Kevin go ahead and make the presentation to you all that he did to us.
All right, good afternoon. Thanks for letting me be here today. I just wanted to extend my appreciation to the board for letting us put this in front of you. If you've not been a soccer parent, which I have been most of my life, my oldest son was one of the first kids that played on a competitive sports team in Cabarrus County back many years ago. And through the efforts of many, many volunteers, this sport has grown in this county and become actually quite a fundraiser for the county in terms of revenue drive. And a few years ago, a gentleman named Bill German saw all the land out of Franklin's Park and thought, why don't we build some soccer fields there? And he spent countless personal hours without compensation, basically clawing and kicking to try to get someone to listen to him to build these soccer fields. And unfortunately for Steve, he finally found Steve. And between the two of them, they did a great deal of work to get these fields built out there. And if you ever go out there on a Saturday, there are literally thousands of kids out there that play soccer there every weekend. And I think those two gentlemen, for their efforts to get this done in our community, deserve to be recognized. And I ask that we be able to put some recognition out there on the fields for their benefit. And I think at the end of the day, what we came to a conclusion was it'd probably be best to do something where we put a plaque on the one of the buildings out there, recognizing these gentlemen for their contributions. And that's what we're here to ask for your approval to do, is to recognize these two guys while they're still around with us, so they can see that the county and the community appreciates their volunteer efforts and their time to get this done.
Thank you, Kevin. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Kevin?
No question, but fully support. If the commission board saw fit and vetted the process and whatnot, I'm totally fine. And as a side comment, before Harrisburg had a Parks and Rec department, it was all volunteers, and I spent a lot of time over there with youth athletics and doing various things. And it takes a tremendous amount of time and a tremendous amount of effort on a lot of different people's parts and a lot of different levels to provide what this county provides. And he's right. If you go anywhere and see a field full of kids, it's just a good feeling. It's that we're providing something that they can do, they can spend time at, the parents can spend time with them. So, I'm fully supportive of this small token of appreciation to these two gentlemen. And really a big thanks to everybody that puts time in to help youth sports in this county. And especially you, Londa, you have logged a lot of time and a lot of hours to make this a great place for youth sports.
One thing I did find out today is that Bill German actually worked 6 years with the state and the county and the city trying to get the soccer field established, get the land. And we know, everybody that knows Steve knows how many hours he worked and how many years he worked. He worked those same 6 hours trying to get it. And I remember when we were finally able to open up the soccer complex, it was a wonderful day. I know that, and there was a lot of hard work that went into by a lot of volunteers, and the Cabarrus Soccer Association, which Bill German was president of at the time, and it has changed names, and it's all still the same group. They've put a lot of hours in out there as well.
Okay, any other comments or questions? I did want to correct Kevin on one thing he said. He said towards the end there that we should recognize these guys while they're still around, like as if he thought they were getting ready to leave or something, and it made it sound like they were old men or something. But I just wanted to point out that Steve Little and I are the same age and graduated from high school together, so he's going to be around for a very long time. But thank you for your efforts, Kevin.
Thank you
very much. Okay, if there are no other questions, we will move now to item 4.4, and that's for the amendment to the Central Area Plan Interlocal Agreement. And I think Jonathan Marshall is going to talk with us about that.
This is an item that you've seen a few other ones just like this. We have a system to consider and review amendments to our agreement with the City of Concord on the Central Area Plan. That Central Area Plan was adopted by both boards. It does limit the extension of water and sewer in certain areas, but we do have the possibility to make exceptions. Mr. Cook actually, I believe, drew up this amendment process. And this is just another single lot at Twinfield Drive and Lake Lynn Road, where someone wants to tie in with the water. Both the city and county feel that it's a reasonable request, and so we're recommending it to you for your approval.
Okay, does anyone have questions for Jonathan? Okay, very good. We will move then now to item 4.5, request for easements from the Water and Sewer Authority. Jonathan's going to talk about that one as well.
These requests for temporary construction easements are for the construction of a parallel sewer line along Back Creek. There is already a sewer line serving much of that area, but because of the explosive growth both in Cabarrus and Mecklenburg County, this is a jointly constructed line with Charlotte Water. There is a need to parallel that line, so they're asking for a construction easement to get in and build this new line within the existing sewer easement there. One of the parcels is at Hickory Ridge Road, just north of the middle school and high school. It's just a small remnant parcel that the county has owned for some years, and in fact we would probably recommend to you in the future that we transfer that to Wasac. There is no other use for that property other than access to the sewer line. The other parcel is a larger piece that we purchased when we were extending Raging Ridge Road from the high school and middle school over to Stallings Road, so that's a larger piece. The total compensation is about $2,500, $2,600 that they are offering for these two construction easements.
Okay, questions for Jonathan on this item? Okay, very good. And we move to item 4.6, which is also Jonathan, tree and brush removal at the Stonewall Jackson property.
Let me start with giving you a bit of an update on what's going on at the Stonewall Jackson property. As you were aware and as you funded, we had Concord Engineering and Surveying performing a boundary survey, which is almost complete. They are just doing some quality control on that, and we should have that boundary survey done. Once we get that, we'll be working with state property and the other groups that use the property to begin drafting out where the new property lines will be on that, and we'll be coming back to you with another surveying proposal to help accomplish that. This particular project that we're recommending to you is to remove the brush and trees around one of the cottages, around the footbridge that goes over Old Charlotte Road, and around the chapel. And we feel like as we're moving into the stage where we're going to start trying to attract buyers for this property who will perform the restoration project under historic covenants and conditions, that we would do well to have one of the cottages where they could see it much better and see the construction much better. So we're recommending removing the trees and brush from around the daughter's cottage. And if you, of course, have been out there or even just driven past, you know how extensive the growth is around some of those cottages. It is quite an undertaking within those fence lines to remove all the brush and trees. And the same is true of the footbridge. The footbridge is, of course, covered in vines, but there are also some large pine trees growing adjacent to it that are beginning to affect the integrity of a rock wall next to Old Charlotte Road. Part of the cost that's associated with this is they probably will have to do some lane shutdowns while they remove some of this material because it is so extensive at that footbridge. And then finally, we are recommending that they clear around the chapel itself. That is one of the prominent structures we think is going to push a lot of the interest in the property. In fact, it's one I've gotten quite a few calls and emails about. It also, we feel like if we clear around it, it'll be easier to patrol and stop any further vandalism. Right now, it's not as grown up as some of the other pieces, but it still has enough cover that it's still being vandalized. There's still a lot of activity on that property, and we feel like this would offer an opportunity, in particular for our deputies, to patrol that better and to even pull up in the drive that's next to it. Again, this is a cost that we are recommending that the budget amendment come from some savings we had on other capital projects, but we are asking that you move it into the project ordinance that goes with Stonewall Jackson. We're wanting to make sure we completely identify and isolate these costs. With the survey cost, the legislation actually requires the state to pay for that. So we're tracking all survey costs to be reimbursed by the state. With these costs, we're tracking them, and we would look for reimbursement when the property sells to whatever private individual, private company is restoring the overall property. That we'll see how that works out as we get proposals, but that is the goal and why we want to make sure it's isolated. And the final thing I'll note is that we have had two things. We've had an assessment of the natural heritage sites on there, which is a unique plant species, as well as the stone outcroppings that are so prominent. And we've gotten a report back from the state on that with a recommended area that we include with any sale. Most of that is around the rock itself, areas that could not be developed just because of the rock formations. And then finally, they are doing a further building assessment. All the buildings on the property of the old Stonewall Jackson facility are condemned at this point and cannot have access. But in order, again, to get buyers, we're going to need to be able to get people inside them. So the state historic properties, as well as the state fire marshal's office and representatives from our construction standards, are going to be in a couple of those buildings in January to do a further assessment to see if under certain conditions we can get people in and out to assess them and be able to let interested parties to inspect the buildings when the time comes.
Thank you, Jonathan. Anybody have questions for Jonathan?
Jonathan, I've got a real quick question. So the debris and some of the growth around the footbridge, some of it's down in the old Charlotte in the right of way of the road. Will we be able to clear that out as well?
Yes, in fact, we'll have to work with the DOT office out of Albemarle to get a traffic plan done, but that's the intent, is to get down and clear that around, because that's starting to affect the structural integrity of it. So okay. We'll work with them to get that clearance and plan.
Okay, you mentioned that. I wasn't sure if we were restricted to only working on the property side and not inside the right of way. So, well, I not only will I give you an enthusiastic yes, I support this, I'll give you a hallelujah, because that's the road that I drive coming to the government center and have been doing it twice a month, well, until last year. And every time I drive under that bridge, it's somewhat depressing to see all of that growth around those, the chapel especially and the bridge. So yeah, absolutely. Total support for getting that done.
There's a lot going on in that area. I talked to the owner of the coffee shop, which you passed, which is, I believe, an old gas station, and they've done a fantastic job rehabilitating that building and opening that business. They're very interested in this. I think it's a sign of what's going on in that area, and it will really help to clear that and generate that interest.
Good. That's fantastic.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I think that certainly we talked about this when we were out on that property. I think it's going to make a tremendous impact on Preservation North Carolina's marketing efforts of that property to get a couple those items taken care of. The price tag was a little bit higher than what I might have guessed it was going to be, but I think we will be able to recover that, as Jonathan mentioned, when the property is sold. And I think it's going to make the entire process move along a lot smoother. For those of you that maybe have not been out there, the first time that I went out after the state turned the property over to us, I was a little bit taken aback, basically saying, holy cow, what have we gotten into? Because there is so much growth around those buildings. But now as the fall has come and some of the foliage is gone, it looks a little bit more manageable. But I think this will really go a long way in helping us make some really positive things happen out there. And even though I think we will recover that expense, I think it's important that we remember what else we got in that deal, which is the entire acreage of Franklin Park, as well as an additional, I think, about 130 acres adjacent to it. So this is still an excellent value for the taxpayers of Cabarrus County. So thank you for that report, Jonathan. Okay, and we'll move now to item 4.7 from Planning and Development, proposed amendment to construction standard fee schedule. And we are happy to have Todd Culp with us to talk about that.
Thank you, Commissioners. Basically, we're approximately 1 year into our new fee study that you adopted last year. And we have a few adjustments that we have run into that we want to request a change. One of them is under our storage sheds. Current fee is currently $246.17, which each additional 100 square foot at $22.75. We want to make a recommendation that those fees currently be dropped to a base rate of $150 and then $25 for each 100 square feet. Now, a storage shed is the sheds that you come in on rollback. They're set up on the block. They're limited to 400 square feet. So this will be a maximum of 400 square feet. After that, we'll move to accessory buildings. So it'll be a max fee of $200, and that will include the structural permit, the building permit, and the electrical permit for all those buildings. On the structural repairs, our current fee is $250 for 100 square feet. What we were running into is a problem trying to fit a small single component into that fee schedule. So what we want to recommend is that we add a structural repair single component for a girder or a seal in a house where square footage might not be the best way to fee this. We can get those fees a little more reasonable on that. And the data and low voltage, our current fee is at $81.25 for the first 1,000 square feet, and it was $81.25 for each additional 1,000 square feet, which caused that fee. Some of the data and low voltage that we were running into were the larger buildings, 15, 20, 25,000 square feet, and it was getting our fees a little out of whack. So we want to make an adjustment for that. For the additional 1,000 square feet, take that down to $10. So it'll be $81.25 and then $10 for each additional 1,000 square feet. And anybody got any questions?
Questions for Todd? I can't imagine that there would be any folks in the building industry out there that would be upset with. These are some pretty significant savings for a lot of folks, I think. Okay, we thank you very much for bringing that to us, Todd, and that'll go on our consent agenda as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we go now to item 4.8, and we are happy to have Susie Morris with us to talk about proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance.
Good afternoon. What you have in front of you this evening is a proposed text amendment that relates to the 160D legislation. We've been talking about this 160D or this combined legislation for about 2 years now, and it finally was passed. So we now have to react to that legislation. It was passed in 2020, and what it did was it combined city and county planning and zoning regulations into a completely new chapter. So the 153 that we have been operating under essentially is no more. So a lot of what you will see in those proposed text amendments are repetitive changes to update the statute numbers and some other items that we are required to change. So I know that it looks like a lot, but once you actually look at what's being changed, it isn't as much as it appears to be. So that original deadline to implement the changes was January 1st of 2021. Because of the pandemic, that was changed and it was extended. But at the same time that it was extended, they also decided to make it effective. So 160D is currently effective, so we would like to go ahead and move forward with these changes. There are several chapters that are impacted, so what I did put a memo together for you all, so we'll kind of go through that so that you'll understand the changes that are being made in the chapters that are impacted. So in Chapter 1, the changes really are related to 160D only, and then they also remove outdated language. Some of the language that was in Chapter 1 was there since that ordinance was adopted, and it is no longer relevant. Chapter 2, there are changes to definitions that are proposed, and some of those are also required for consistency with 160D. There were a few definitions that we didn't have for uses that were permitted uses, and then we are also proposing to add a few new uses that we'll talk about in a little bit. Chapter 3, this is the chapter where it talks about the zoning districts and the permitted uses that are allowed. One of the big changes with the legislation is that we can no longer use the term conditional use. It has to be called special use. So that's the majority of the changes that you'll see in Chapter 3. That term being changed in the actual language and text, and then also being changed in that permitted use table at the back of Chapter 3. There are a handful of uses where interpretations had to be made over the last year that we are proposing to be added. And we also are codifying the districts where those uses would be allowed. For example, one is a wellness retreat. Another is furniture repair and upholstery. Crematorium wasn't listed, and we had a new funeral home that came in that wanted to have a crematorium. So again, those are uses that we've had to operate under an interpretation, and we're just codifying where they would be located. And we're also proposing in Chapter 3 that trucking companies and heavy equipment companies with dispatch, and then also truck stops or truck terminals, would be allowed in the limited industrial district by right. Those currently require a conditional use permit. And along with 160D changes, there is a new use that is a healthcare structure, which is a temporary use. If you remember, back before the holidays, you all approved that change to the fee schedule, which was related to an anticipation of this healthcare structure, the temporary healthcare structure being added to the ordinance. So that is added as a temporary use in Chapter 7. With Chapter 5, this really was a lot of cleanup work in this chapter. We clarified how setbacks are applied, and we also removed the structural coverage requirement, so we will operate on an impervious requirement, which is also consistent with what the state does as a control for permitting. The setbacks in the GI district are proposed to be reduced to allow use and to open up a little bit more our industrial sites. And an increase in allowable impervious area is also being proposed for the GI and LI districts. Again, that's to allow those sites to be opened up and for existing industry or new industries that locate here to be able to use the site and also to expand where needed. And then you'll see that Chapter 15, we had a lot of duplicative and repetitive information and some also conflicting information. So language from Chapter 15 has been combined with Chapter 5 to try to direct the user to one chapter to find out what lot standards are. Chapter 6 covers our exceptions and modifications based on existing conditions. It allows some administrative adjustments that can be made without folks having to go to the Board of Adjustment for variances. So there is language to clarify fence installations in relation to the floodplain and adjacent properties, and again to also codify some legal interpretations that we've been operating off of related to the ETJ. And also to clarify the number of panels that would be allowed as a residential accessory use when it comes to solar panels. Chapter 7 includes clarifications again and codifies legal interpretations that have been made related to specific uses. It also includes some expanded, specifically designated uses as home occupations. For example, we had someone that wanted to do a hydrographics. We didn't know what that was, so we had to see what it was, and it's actually comparable to embroidery and screen printing. We worked with legal on that and with the fire marshal's office. So all of these items are items that either existed and we're just clarifying or expanding, or it was something where we had to make an interpretation that was determined it was allowed as a home occupation and we're codifying it. It also looks at accessory dwelling units and rural home occupations. So that is being updated to include language where if somebody is proposing a rural home occupation or proposing an accessory dwelling unit that is part of another structure, it codifies how that is calculated, and then also what would need to happen, because those applicants would sign a notarized statement saying that they understand how much square footage could be used. In Chapter 8, those are our conditional uses. So as mentioned previously, those references have to be changed from conditional use to special use. And pursuant to the requirements of 160D, there are some changes that we need to make to wireless telecommunications standards. We are also clarifying our supplemental standards that related to solar farms. It is my understanding that some of you are aware that there is a working group out there that is trying to come up with some statewide standards for solar farms and how those are decommissioned. We currently are proposing that a bond be provided to the county to cover the county in the interim to see what the state, kind of where they land on that issue. Some jurisdictions require it, some don't. So we are proposing to put a decommissioning bond in it this time. Chapter 9, there are a few minor edits to the ratios of required shrubs for some different types of landscape yards. And again, that is a minor change, and that number is actually being reduced a little bit just to make sure that it can be accommodated in that buffer the way it's calculated. Chapter 12 is related to 160D mostly, and the administration of the ordinance into procedural requirements. We are also updating our traffic impact analysis studies. That has not been updated since probably around 2006. So we need to do some updates so that the language is consistent with adjacent jurisdictions and also consistent with what NCDOT requires. And those changes have been reviewed by the county engineer and also by the district and division engineers that work with us as our transportation and traffic consultants. The table at the end of that particular chapter also needed to be updated with our new fee schedule. Chapter 13 has been updated. Again, a lot of the changes are related to 160D. We are no longer allowed to use the current process that we have, which is a conditional use rezoning process, which is a two-step process. We will have to change to what is called conditional zoning, which is a legislative process. So that will take the Board of Adjustment out of those particular types of rezonings, and also will change those types of rezonings out of a quasi-judicial procedure to just a legislative procedure. Chapter 14 has been updated again. It is mostly related to 160D, and then also to codify some interpretations that we've been working under. One of those is related to multiple structures on property that were built prior to the ordinance, and then also for subdividing properties where those particular structures don't meet the ordinance. And we've added in some diagrams that will hopefully help folks to understand how that is applied. With Chapter 15, that has been updated again with 160D, and also to update the NCDOT standards and to include additional language outlining the subdivision review process. This chapter needed a lot of work, so because of the way the framework has been changed and things have kind of been moved around, what you have in your packet is the new chapter. You don't have an old chapter because it just wouldn't have made sense. Appendix A is being updated. Again, that is the chapter that really gets into the nuts and bolts of the TIA. It also talks about our road typical diagrams and our pavement structures, and those needed to be updated. The changes are noted in red text, and then anything that would be deleted is in strike-through text. And the proposed changes have been reviewed by the Text Amendment Committee, the county attorney, the county engineer, the Health Alliance, and NCDOT staff as needed. The Planning and Zoning Commission did vote unanimously on November 10th to forward the proposed amendments to the Board of Commissioners for final consideration. And as part of this, we will need to hold a public hearing to receive comments if there are any on the proposed changes. And I know it's a lot, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I don't know if Mr. Cook wants to add anything as far as the 160D legislation, but again, a lot of this and the majority of the changes are mandated because of that 160D legislation.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. You did a good job of explaining that without going through the additional 278 pages that are included. And I'm sure that we will all read those carefully, if not already. But does anyone have questions or comments for Susie? Okay, very good. You did an excellent job, if there are no questions on that. Okay, we will move now to the approval of our regular meeting agenda. And of course, all of you have a copy of that before you. Are there any questions or concerns about anything on the agenda as presented? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda, including scheduling of the public hearing that we just talked about on the proposed text amendments.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Shue, a second by Commissioner Strang. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. And that motion passes unanimously. We do not have need of a closed session tonight, so at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Shue, and I think a second by Commissioner Strang to adjourn the meeting. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes, and I thank you all and our TV audience for joining us tonight, and we will be back with our regular meeting in 2 weeks. So everyone have a good evening. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you.